Hey, everybody, welcome to the Unconventional Therapist Guide to Nothing. My name is Dave. I'm joined here with my co host, Greg, and we got a wonderful little episode for you today. I would say it's very uplifting in some ways and then very crushing in other ways.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you think
Is that,
that?
I think that, yes, I think that it's interesting, the placement of this, because it's like February is a lot of things, but there's a month it's love there, right? Isn't we sort of think of Black History Month, we think
Yep.
of Valentine's Day. And last week we talked about heartbreak, which is essentially a void that's left when it could be when a person of interest, a partner, a lover, a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, leaves your world and leaves that hole there for you. And this week, I think we're going to explore that void and how it can be exploited, how you're left in this weakened state, and how that leaves you vulnerable to, I don't know, manipulation, answers. You're very answer seeking. And I think that's what we're going to talk about in this episode
With
with Twin Flames.
twin flames.
Yeah.
So some people might be understanding what twin flames means from the Netflix documentary, from the podcast by Wondery that came out much before that.
Hmm.
But even before all that, it's been a concept for quite some time, which we will explore and we'll get into kind of what inevitably became of, led up to the forming of. I don't know if they're technically using this term, but the Twin Flames cult.
Yeah, I don't think the cult's using it,
Yeah, I don't
but
think they.
but
Maybe
we're
they do. Who
using it.
knows? I
Yeah.
actually wouldn't be super surprised if they did. But yeah, we will. Before we get into that, I did want to make a quick update, and I wanted to do this at the beginning of the episode because it's something we really want people to make sure they are aware of. And I don't know if everybody makes it all the way to the end. I hope they do. But we have set up an Apple Subscribe and a Patreon page. So you have two options. And the reason for these two options is we are going to be currently offering bonus episodes and maybe even some other small perks as we go.
Yeah.
So if you sign up for Apple Subscribe or Patreon, you'll have access to those bonus episodes. We're looking at monthly, hopefully at least two a month. That's my goal. Just short little episodes, little supplemental episodes. Maybe they'll have tie-in to an episode, or maybe they'll just be completely different and more like concept-based, just little short deep dives into our thoughts on certain things. For example, we did Heartbreak. And then we did a little bonus episode on heartbreak syndrome, which is a medical condition, and kind of talked about that a little bit. So yeah, I wanted people to check that out and see what fits for you. I know there's two different subscriber prices. Apple Subscribe is a little bit cheaper than Patreon, but the thing with Patreon is we'll have the option to do a few different things on Patreon, like offer video versus just the audio. And we can even probably I don't know. I think there's an option to get people's mailing address. So we might be able to send you, if we have stickers or some other kind of merch or stuff, we would have that option as well. So that would be why the Patreon's $1 more. Just $1 though,
Hey, it's worth every penny, I think.
worth every penny. So
Yeah.
I wanted to point that out. And then I also want to just give a shout out to one of our buddies, our listener, Joe B, who messages us here and there on email and will often throw out some really, really great suggestions for future episodes. But he also made a comment that I guess I had made a little sarcastic joke to you, or made a joke that you'd pointed out I was wearing glasses. Like, Greg, I've worn glasses every episode. And he went through and he was looking, he's like, Dave, you're never wearing glasses. I was just giving Greg a hard time. I rarely ever wear glasses because unfortunately you can see all the reflection and not my actual eyes usually on
But
video.
you're running them back
I
apparently
am
this time.
wearing them today because I'm
And
tired. That's when I usually
thank
wear
you,
them.
Joe, for saying that. Because I'll tell you what that is? It's a little psychological term, a new one. Gaslit. I was
Yeah,
gaslit.
yes, you were gaslit. So I had Joe and Greg fooled with that little
Yeah.
joke.
I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'm crazy.
All right. So
So,
yeah, that's it for updates. Greg, start us off, bud.
all right, buddy. So listen, love isn't just something that we think we need, right? Like this longing sense, love, like romantic love, love for children, love for friends, love. Like this is an essential part of being a human being. And I mean in terms of survival, Dave. It's if you've ever seen a nature show, or if you're into some weird stuff, and you've seen an animal born, like any other mammal, a giraffe, a moose, a deer, they plop right out of their moms and they're off to the races, essentially. And human beings are not like that. We require care. We require someone to put up with us for years before we're able to survive on our own. And I think the emotion that allows us to do that, that perpetuates the species, is love. Because without that, we cannot survive. And I don't want that to sound like love is just some biological necessity that happens, because I guess it is in a way. So that would make it feel like it's nothing. But without it, we literally could not exist as a species. So in a sense, I think it's everything. I think love is the thing here that's being exploited, that need that we all have. And this is where we're at with this, Dave. Like, this is what I think sets the stage for Twin Flames. And we'll get into this. Like, they were looking for something to pounce on, to exploit, and to take advantage of people, and they found it for sure.
Okay.
So where do you like
Big shout out to
Twin
Love right
Flames?
there.
Yeah, shout out to Love. Twin Flames, Dave. Like,
Yeah.
what was
So,
it? What
and I
is
just
it?
want to make this very clear. When we're going into this topic, we're almost talking about two separate topics.
Mhm.
We're talking about the term twin flames, and then we're separately talking about the twin flames cult. Because
Mhm.
one of those things is not great, and the other one is totally fine.
Totally
So
fine.
the
Yeah,
concept itself is there's nothing wrong with it. We're definitely not passing judgment on the concept. We are probably passing equal judgment on the cult.
cults tend to do that though. They tend to take some
Even
innocuous
ones I
or
like.
like yeah, some great like Heaven's Gate isn't a bad thing. Heaven's Gate is on its own is a good
You
thing.
know,
But
that's a great point.
you know,
They technically usually start on a concept that isn't evil. Otherwise, we would probably see right through that, right? So
yeah,
you're taking a concept, an idea, a philosophy, and you're exploiting it.
that's exactly it.
Interesting. I never really I mean that's obvious, but I never really thought of it in that term. But
Yeah, but coming up with like pointing out the obvious in or like having the obvious come to you is sometimes like the most difficult things to kind of articulate, isn't it?
sure.
Hard
Yeah.
to do.
Like we know what a cult is, but if we were to sit here and just like immediately right off the top of
Yeah,
our head say that it's hard to like
define it.
define it, it would be tough. So yeah. All right. Well, the term twin flames was, as far as I'm aware, it was first coined in a story, a book, a romance of two worlds by Marie Corelli, which was published in 1886, where the terms twin flames and twin souls were used as synonyms. The text suggests that only very advanced souls who incarnated from higher dimension worlds close to God have twin flames, and twin flames stay in the spiritual reality, communicating with the incarnated twin like their divine lover and guide. Only very lucky souls can have twin flames incarnated into physical reality and have a chance to meet and unite. So this is like this really metaphysical idea that where there's this other divine version of our twin flame that's but like only if we're very lucky will we ever actually meet that person in the physical. It's a really
It's
interesting idea.
yeah, it is interesting, and it's like it feels kind of right. Feels kind of maybe a little bit true,
Sure. I
right?
mean, it definitely feels like something I would want to believe, right?
Yeah, like even
Because
if you're
you
in a
met
relationship
that.
with someone, you could say to yourself, we could all convince ourselves of this that it's like it's like, yeah, like no, I've been in this relationship, I love this person, but like, do they completely get me? Is this my soulmate? I
Is
don't
this my
know.
twin flame or is my twin
Is this my twin
flame
flame?
up there still?
Yeah,
And I just
yeah.
wasn't one of those lucky souls.
And you know, you have moments where you're like, you are definitely not my twin flame.
And it's one of those things that we want to be true, right? We want to
Yeah,
like feel like there's someone out there. Maybe I'll be that person who has that opportunity to have that. But I also thought that this is really heavy and deep new agey stuff for 1886.
yeah,
No,
it
right?
is.
All
Yeah.
right. Um, so yeah, this is kind of where that term has started from. And what is a twin flame? Twin flame is said to be an intensely connected pairing of individuals. This is the twin flames that we know today. This is like the contemporary version of twin flames. So it's two individuals that meet that are have this intense connection. And there's some signs, according to a site that I read on Medical News Today. There are some in their structure. There are some signs that you would see for a twin flame to be considered to be existing. And as I said, it's an intense sense of familiarity, recognition, and longing. So people may have an intense bond as though they've known each other for a long time. There's a strong sense of connection. So, but that connection isn't always just romantic. It also could be
Yeah.
platonic, familial, even professional. But regardless of the type, the connection makes the two people gravitate towards each other. It pulls them together. There could be like multiple similarities between the people. They may hold the same values, use the same moral compass, have similar interests. Um, they may also like mirror each other's past experiences. They may not be exactly the same, but they both have experienced like neglect, abandonment, violence, kind of connecting almost through similar traumas. Uh, their differences complement each other. So the traits and characteristics that are not similar tend to complement each other, kind of like balancing each other out. And the differences in each other's traumas and circumstances also help them process their trauma and in turn grow and heal from them. So they're almost like um, working together to both become more whole, I guess.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's actually when I'm doing couples therapy, which I try not to do. It's like you have to. You often are confronting each other with the problems, like facing problems, like yelling at each other, looking at each other. You can imagine what it looks like. But then if you take the problem and push it off to the side, and then you and the person you're in a relationship with turn and face the problem together, that's a much better way to address it. So it's like that's what I get from that little part
Yeah,
there. Like
that's
that
a
would
nice way to
be,
look at it.
yeah.
Yeah. Amplification of insecurities, fears, and doubts. While seeing a person's soul in the twin flames, reflection can bring familiarity and comfort. It can also serve as a mirror that shows the person the things that they are not ready to face. So it starts to make you look at those things, and which those things could include your flaws, your fears, insecurities, unprocessed trauma, and it encourages you to deal with them and grow from them.
Hmm.
A lot of this is about like self healing through your twin flame, right? um,
Yeah.
Inspiration to grow and be better. The purpose of a twin flame relationship is to help a person reach their personal transformation and soul growth, and the presence of tension. So the twin flame can reopen unhealed wounds and revisit avoided issues that a person would rather not confront. They also there may be also a constant tension as they both grow and heal from the relationship. I do like in many ways this idea that twin flames help you become less avoidant because
Yeah. No, yeah, I was just thinking,
I
I was just gonna mention that.
I talk about that quite a bit, and it's even something I've always recognized in my own life. Avoidance is such a huge issue that so many of us face. So like the idea that somebody makes us face the things that we're trying to avoid all the time is super powerful.
And it's like, I know that it's hard to face this thing, but you have me and I'm here with you.
Yeah,
So that's the kind of nice little thing. It's almost like a therapeutic relationship.
very much
Isn't
so.
that what, well,
Absolutely.
it's, and well, Dave, and there's stages of this too. I kind of like to think of the stages as the hero's journey of love.
Ooh,
You know what I mean? So,
that
like when you're
sounds
going,
powerful
well,
and
I mean, the
sexual.
hero's, well, I'm reading through this and it's like, okay, well, a hero's journey is kind of set up the same way where it's there's stages of um I don't know, there's a process to it. And for this, it's like the yearning stage is the first stage. And that without this stage, none of it happens. And we can all identify with this like feeling that's driving us towards like there's something missing with us and we just want to fill that with somebody. And that sounds unhealthy, but at the same time, we are social creatures and we all do need people in our life. And I'm glad you said like it's either romantic or a friendship, but we all need something like that in our
Yeah,
life, I think.
absolutely.
The meeting stage is, obviously it involves meeting the person, and it's going to be described like you were kind of mentioning as this intense experience. And something that sticks out to me is anytime there's been a real genuinely important relationship in my life, you do have that feeling as if it almost feels like we've met before,
Did you feel
like
like you
we've
had met
known
me
each other.
before when you first met me?
Honestly, Dave, it's funny. Like I can say this because like I don't. Yes, I did. I felt like right when we met, I was like, this guy he gets it, he gets me, and we're so different, but it's
It
like
didn't
right
matter.
away I noticed how different you were than me, like just views and like everything. And I was like, doesn't bother me though. And I was like, all right, well, that's good. Because sometimes it would, right? And somebody else, if they
Sure,
rub you the wrong way,
absolutely.
if they push it on you.
Yeah.
So that was our meeting stage. And now this is the second part of our falling in love stage. Yeah, and these obviously we're kidding, but these
I
intense
mean, they
emotions,
said this could be romantic or platonic or
true.
whatever. So I do think that that can happen, and I do agree that sometimes you meet people and there's just that comfort, that
Yeah, and
familiarity.
do friends fall in love though? I mean, I'm being serious. Like,
Sometimes it feels like I've seen some. I've seen some
I
people
love my
feel like
friends.
I feel like I've watched other people fall in love with other people on a friendship level. Are you talking about like
Okay.
friendly love or like
Mhm.
does it turn into romantic love?
No, no, no.
Like keeps like
It,
friendly love.
friendly
I've
love.
watched people, in my opinion, it looks like fall in like friendly love. And I think it's
Okay, all
funny.
right.
It's funny to watch.
I
I
would
don't know
love
if it's ever
to like
happened with me, but
that's our next
our next bonus
little
episode,
yeah.
friendly
Do
love.
friends fall in love? Is that possible? And that's the pinnacle.
I,
And is
I
that the
you know,
highest version of love?
there is definitely something to this. And even I can think even like our friendship when it started, there was like a level of excitement, like, oh dude, there's so many things that we should do. We should do
Yeah.
this, we should do that. And we were always bouncing off ideas. And now we're in that like you'll bring up one of those later stages.
Oh
the,
God. Okay. Yeah. All
the,
right. Yeah.
so
So,
but yeah,
and you know what's
I do
and
think so.
just like romantic relationships though, you trade like roles. It shifts constantly. Like at one point one's going to be the runner, one's going to be the chaser, and then we'll talk about that a little bit. So the falling in love stage, Dave and I have kind of got into that a little bit. It's that deep connection, that not so much the intimate or passionate desire, but in loving relationships,
Yeah.
in romantic relationships, that's going to be there. There's going to be a honeymoon period, which we've all experienced, right? Like the connection gets deeper and deeper, and it's like you've been together for a few weeks, but you're euphoric. It feels like, you're ready to like get married and spend the rest of your life together, and it feels like spiritual.
Hmm.
And then things start to get real. The honeymoon wears off and you hit the turmoil or testing period. And this is when the real things happen. This is, I think, why I kind of thought of it as a hero's journey, because you have to overcome this area where your flaws are going to come out, their flaws are going to come out, and you're going to learn things about their past. You're going to see things about them that you red flags are going to pop up that you very much overlooked in the honeymoon and falling in love period, and you're going to have to say like, is this worth it, or is
Sure.
this, you know
Yep.
um and then there's the runner and chaser phase, which I used to call this hand. Have you ever heard that phrase? When
Never.
like one person has hand in the relationship and the other person,
Okay.
it,
I
it,
never
it
heard
kind of
that.
is that way. You never heard that? Where
Mm-mm.
like if you have hand in the relationship, it's like you're more willing to have the relationship and you'd be less affected, and then the other person's just kind of chasing you and they'll bend a little bit more than you. So each flame carries a role. One's going to be the runner, and that's the person who's kind of trying to escape from the relationship. And the chaser is going to be the one that's wanting to like almost will at all costs keep it together,
Okay.
Like
Sure.
that's the kind of thing.
Yep.
And then there's the surrender and dissolution phase. And so after a
I
period,
give up. I give up.
I
Just
know, I know. Yeah, well, kind of, right? It's almost like it's acceptance. Well, after this period of turmoil or distress, they become comfortable with their vulnerabilities. They're fine with their insecurities. They're going to the bathroom in front of each other. I don't know, right? So both egos get to relax. And some people think that this is like the best stage where you learn the nature of each other, you feel very comfortable with each other, and you're just you and not worried about anything.
For sure.
And you know, the things that bothered you about the person, the little red flags, you just kind of accept everything, the entire person, and you develop this oneness where you've become, I don't know, twin flames, right? Kindred spirits.
Yeah. There's an important thing that happens during that surrender and disillusion thing process though for the twin flame experience. And
Please.
that's the stage where it's kind of noted that the healing of the past traumas and the growth begins. So
Yes.
at that point you're both working together in a way because like you said those egos are kind of put down and you're acknowledging that like this is the relationship that's going to benefit us both, right? And we're both going to
Right. It's
grow.
that and like you were mentioning before, like that's the stage where I'm not avoiding these things anymore. I'm like my past is my past. Like I'm facing it, I'm showing it to you, and hopefully that means I'm healing from it. But it's a very vulnerable thing though, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. It really
It is.
is.
And that's
It,
the scary.
as I was reading through these stages, I had to point out one thing that was just glaring at me. And this is going to be one of those things where I'm not sure where, like, I don't know when these stages were outlined.
Mhm.
I do think Gary Chapman, we did an episode on the love languages. I do believe that was in the 90s. Is that correct? Gary
Yeah, that's when the
Chapman,
book
if I
came
remember
out. But I mean,
correctly.
he'd been kind of like playing with that for a while though.
Okay.
So it's hard to,
There are so many parallels
yeah.
in his love languages outline and this. So, even from the starting with like the euphoria falling in love, he calls it, they call it what? Let me go back for a second. They call it the falling in love stage. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
obvious. So,
Yeah.
but it's the same thing. It's that euphoric, like I'm gonna look past all the red flags. I'm just so into this at that point. And then it kind of starts to turn into the maintenance as he would describe it. And here it's kind of after the honeymoon period is
Yeah.
the turmoil and the testing period. That's when that euphoria has kind of shifted and now it's the real life stuff. You're noticing all the things that you were overlooking before. So I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting.
And yeah, so I'm just curious where they borrowed this material from because this material, one of them influenced the other, or they were both influenced by something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're just influence. Aren't they both just kind of observations of how this whole thing goes down?
Yeah.
And they put it into their own words.
I mean, it's it always seems like there's like an original idea somewhere, right?
Yeah.
That outlines it's like the hero's journey and all these things that we see that are kind of based on the hero's journey and that I just was thinking of that when as soon as I started reading this I was like this seems so similar to the
Yeah.
love languages, which I am actually saying as a positive thing because I think it brings validity to both twin flames
Absolutely. And I'll
and
tell
the
you
love
what,
languages.
the love languages never turned into a cult. And I think, although the guy was a little strange, he had some weird things, but like I think there's some very useful stuff in the love
I
languages thing.
I'm constantly ever since we did our deep dive, I'm constantly bringing that up
Yep.
in with people dealing with relationship stuff because it is so
There's
relatable.
some good stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And then there was that American spiritualist Claire Prophet who she popularized the twin flames right before the new millennium in 1999, right? So the name of the book was Soulmates and Twin Flames, the spiritual dimension of love and relationships. So this thing kind of mixes Eastern religion like Hindu, Buddhist, and mixed with like Christian beliefs, right? To suggest that twin flames are two people with this permanent spiritual divine connection and and see this is where it kind of like I don't know where we drift a little bit. You need the help of someone else or something else or a twin flame to reach salvation either spiritually in heaven or whatever that is or
Yeah.
enlightenment in an eastern sense, which is I don't know. What do you think about that? Like do you need someone else to become the best version of yourself? I think that it's uncomfortable to say maybe.
There is multiple answers to that.
Yeah.
For sure, and different ways to look at it. I do think that at times it's really hard to do all reflecting alone,
Yeah.
and seeing ourselves through the lens of other people at times can be a really helpful thing, as long as it's not something that becomes dare I say toxic or overly negative, because then we start to really believe that. But when we can see things through the lens of other people, sometimes it's we start to notice things about ourselves, and that can be interesting if we're open to looking at them. And I think
Absolutely.
that's
And
what
you're right
this
because
isn't that what this is all about, is sometimes we run away
yeah,
from it when we see it and we want to avoid it. This is forcing us to look at it.
being in a relationship makes you a little bit more normal. I may have mentioned before that when I was in my single phase for a while, I got to a point where I was like on Friday night I would come home and get like a large everything pizza and wings and lay down on the floor for whatever reason and just eat on the floor. And it's like, is that weird? You just develop these little habits where it's like, am I weird without when I'm single? Is single Greg an odd person? You know what I mean?
Well,
Because you do manage your behavior when you're with someone else. You're probably
right.
cleaner, all kinds of things.
Healthier, you make
Healthier.
make less risky choices because you're
Hmm.
considering other people in your choices at times.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So, Dave, should I get into a little bit about like the actual when people think of the Twin Flames cult, like kind of what was
yeah.
going on there?
So
Like I
everything we just covered was about the concept of twin flames, and I think, just from the way that we were describing it, people can see that obviously our judgment about the concept of twin flames is at pretty non-biased. I don't have
yeah.
any strong views. I'll share some thoughts about the concept later, but here's where it starts to get a little problematic.
Okay. So Jeff and Shalia Ion, um, this is the when you think of the Twin Flames cult, it's these are the two leaders. And Jeff was essentially homeless, but in the Hawaiian, I don't know, what would you call it? Like jungle? He's like living in
Yeah.
the woods in Hawaii. And so he's homeless, he's not successful, but to shift the perspective on it, he makes these like videos and almost as if to say like this I choose this, I like this. And then he meets Shalia, who's this new agey spiritual. She's into everything. She's into tarot cards. She's probably into Ouija boards. Not that there's anything wrong with
Yeah.
that. No, she's into every kind of like she's into astrology and um I'm trying to think of like etymology or what was the thing? Enneagrams. She's into everything you can think of, just kind of a searcher looking for something. She's trying to find meaning, but she's casting such a wide net that it almost feels she doesn't care what it is, that she just wants the identity of I'm this Buddhist, but I'm also do tarot cards. Like no real identity, not really committed to
Sure.
anything. And Jeff wasn't either. He was trying to figure out a way to exploit people. And before even this idea came up, he was making claims on his videos and he was creating a bunch of different websites. Like one was that he could cure cancer.
Mm.
And you got to think, he is literally looking for people who are in the most desperate,
Vulnerable.
vulnerable things where
Yeah.
like if it's just the right amount of money or just the like just catches you just enough because he is kind of an articulate, interesting guy, even though I think he comes off weird right away. But it's like, hey, this thing that you'll take a stab in the dark for, no matter what, you'll defy all logic. It doesn't really matter. It's worth a shot. Like he's looking for those kinds of things.
And I think I remember when I had originally heard about this previously, before even Hawaii, he was a pretty normal guy with some normal friends. And I use normal with quotes, obviously, because what
Yeah.
is normal? But I think I remember hearing his friends reflecting that, this, even him in the way he was in Hawaii wasn't even the way they really knew him. And then seeing him when he meets Shalea, or however you say it, that
Yeah,
was
Chile,
different
actually.
too,
Well,
right?
look, dude, think about it like this. He's isolating in the woods,
Yeah.
right?
And he's
So
got some
right
Christian
there,
roots too, I believe.
hmm
I think he grew up Christian, and so not that that's like saying anything, but it just kind of shows the contrast to
so do we. So
it shows the contrast to where he was to who he is now. you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I really think like being in the woods, that isolation kind of maybe loses his identity a little bit. Isolating is not good for you. It's just not. And then he meets this woman who's new aging, spiritual, and it's like, oh, this is an identity I kind of get behind a little bit. Plus, I'm kind of you know, I don't really know. I'm directionless right now, so
Yeah.
this makes sense. So they get together and they start this thing off, and it's not really culty at first. There's this thing that they do that's called the mirror exercise, and I actually thought it was kind of interesting, where you look in the mirror and instead of focusing on what was wrong with that person that you were in the relationship, why don't they don't want you, you say like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, what needs healing with me? And it's almost this gentle way of looking at yourself and your own problems and being compassionate about like why you're feeling that way. And it's kind of interesting, but it's kind of definitely pulled from some kind of like 80s weird therapy, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So the first issue comes in is when they they say something along the lines of here's myself and here's my wife Shalia and we have this perfect relationship. We have this perfect thing. And just because you have this thing, this perfect situation, it doesn't mean you have any idea or have the blueprint on how to get that. Like that's going to work for everyone. Like if you meet a couple that's in the perfect relationship, they don't have the answer for you to become in a perfect relationship, right? Because
Right.
it's a
But
very different
we
path.
do as a society tend to look at people in perfect relationships and feel like they have this magic key, right?
Yeah, they
We
just
get
got
a
lucky, or we
and
don't know what's going on.
exactly. That's what I was just gonna say. We're also seeing like what they want us to see as well, and some people hide things better.
Yeah. So what starts to make this online business a little bit culty is the following, and not necessarily in this order. So everyone has to, at some point, if you're a cult leader, you have to turn into some kind of Jesus figure, and Jeff is no different.
Yeah.
And Dave, I was thinking about this,
So
and
he
there's an
literally does it,
evolutionary reason. Yeah, he actually looked like Jesus in a sense.
and he calls
Uh,
himself Jesus, I believe.
yeah, but he should say skinny Jesus because I feel like
She,
Jesus is probably in better shape than. But there's a reason why this happens in cults, and it has to happen in order for the cult to survive. And that's because like you or I could be in charge of like a group of people or maybe have this following. But unless you can't really gather the masses unless it's under the umbrella of some kind of spirituality. Like you have to believe in something beyond the person to for this to work. I think that's true. Right? Because the clans would get together with like 30, 40 members. That maybe 100 at the most, I think, from in that book Sapiens, they talk about how human beings were only in groups of 100 at the most because they had to be led by someone, and that someone could only hold sway on so many people. But if you take that power and put it on something external and something spiritual and something powerful, something we can all kind of look up to, then the number is limitless.
okay,
And that's kind of an interesting concept,
it
right?
is. Yeah. Yep.
Also in the cult, there has to be like a hierarchy. And there's historical context for this too, Dave. You have to have the ability to move up in the group,
Yeah.
and there has to be like a rank structure. And I think
I
that's
love that
important.
you're bringing this up because
Yeah.
this reminds me of that concept. I know we always go back to this when we're talking about cults, but with Heaven's Gate, we were saying how genius it was that they turned their members into their future recruiters and they gave people responsibilities. So you felt like now I'm not only a member, but I have responsibilities and I have a role here.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that it's so useful. And then it's like
What was the
you
name
can
of the role that they give people? They give couples in Twin Flames. Do you remember the
coaches
title?
maybe? Was it
Coach, something
coaches?
like that. But they essentially that's what they become. They
Yeah.
become their twin flame coach, and they check in with them, and they're responsible for their success almost.
Yeah, and it cost a pretty penny too.
Yeah,
So what's interesting in the beginning of this, in the very beginnings, you decide your twin flame, and it's not great right after the beginning, but that's one good thing. But you decide who your twin flame is because you have a feeling about them. And just because you feel like this person is your twin flame, it doesn't really matter how they feel. It's now becomes your job to become some kind of Pepe Le Pew. Remember Pepe Le Pew?
oh yeah,
This. Like you hunt this person down and you find them and you
Oh my
convince
God.
them and you don't take no for an answer.
I
And
forgot
so
about
this is
Pepe
like
Le Pew.
stalking.
Yeah.
Yeah, this Pepe Le Pew was a stalker. He
Poor
thought that
Pepe Le
cat was his
Pew. He
twin
was so
flame.
cute.
I know. And he's French, so I have a
Stalker.
soft spot. Yeah. He and we as kids we were like, no, I get it. But like he saw his twin flame in that cat that got accidentally painted by right? Isn't that kind of like how it happened?
I think so.
And he was like, I'm going to get her. She's my twin flame. She's the love of my life. And it's not really that important how she feels about the whole situation. And they throw
Yes.
this idea over your head, like if you do it right, and if you keep listening to us, it's like they call it a harmonious union, and they hold it over your head like that's carrot on a stick
Right.
idea. It's
Right.
like find this, and if you're not making it work, then you're not working hard enough, and it's your fault, right?
Yeah.
And then what they start doing after that is they start deciding who your twin flame is, and they're
Right.
like, you know, you could be saying like, I don't really like that person, and they're like, no, like
They convince you
that's
you
your twin
do.
flame.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a problem, right?
Of
And it puts
course.
them in a very powerful position because
Yeah.
like these people who are coming to these seminars and this online making these payments, they're coming from a place of maybe a recent breakup, desperation, maybe never been in a serious relationship, maybe it's the
Yeah.
only thing they've ever wanted in their whole life, and they're willing to try anything to make it work.
Yep.
And they isolate you from your family, and you see this in every single cult in history, right?
And
Like,
Greg, the other thing that's super important to point out is it's no longer even just about I need to find love or my twin flame. Now it's also I need the acceptance from my group leaders. And if this doesn't work out, I've failed them and I don't want to fail them because their opinions matter so much and they know what is right for me. So I have to keep working on this. I have to keep pursuing this. Otherwise, I failed them and I failed myself. But I think it's actually turns almost more important that they don't fail them.
right, absolutely. And it's really hard because you're stuck. It creates a situation of like stuckness where you can't force someone to love you. That's a weird, odd concept. And why would you want to do that? But this is what they
Yeah.
sort of preach, and to the point where people are like arrested for stalking and getting restraining orders against them. And when that happens, they don't say, "Okay, wow, that we've gone a little too far." They say, "Nope, you got to keep going.
And
Got to make it work."
the most egregious case is the one
Yeah.
that's and we didn't want to go into all the details of this because you guys can all watch the Netflix show or go
Give us the
on and
egregious though.
it, they actually got somebody to do a gender
Hmm.
transformation, convincing that person that that's what was needed in order to get their initially same-sex twin flame, even though they identified as heterosexual. They were told that their twin flame was this other member who was of the same sex, and that in order to get their affection, their attention, to get them to give in that they're their twin flame, they should do the gender changing surgery, I believe. And wow, this
Yeah,
went so far.
that's
But
going really far.
what you said is also crazy too. That chaser runner dynamic led to someone being arrested for stalking, for harassment, and
Yeah.
there's so many things, and I encourage everybody to dig in. The Wondery podcast is excellent. I
The Wondery
was
podcast I listened to, I just looked at my notes and I listened to it in 2022 because we talked about doing this years ago.
I was
And
hooked
I
on this
listened to the whole
story
thing.
when that came
Yeah.
out. So I know I suggested it, and I think now you have to get the Wondery subscription in order to listen to it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a really great story with a lot of the interviews with the
Individual
actual
stories. Yeah.
people involved. But the Netflix show is pretty good. It's the same pretty much.
Yeah,
Same thing.
and what happens with these groups, and I don't think we've seen. Hopefully, so put it this way: Jeff Snow, David Koresh, Jeff Snow, Jim Jones, and I think that's the only reason why we haven't seen like a huge tragedy come out of this thing.
Sure.
And is he a Marshall Applewhite? Is that the name
Oh
for
yeah.
heaven's sake? T and Doe?
He might be more of that. They might be more of a T and O. The other big difference too though is this is what it looks like in modern day with internet being the way it is, with
Yeah.
access
Yep.
to, social media.
Great
It's
point.
going to be different. He's on like he was on YouTube, I think. Their
Yeah.
meetings were, I think, live streamed at one point. Like they had access to things that our previous cult leaders never did, but also they were subject to scrutiny way earlier and easier than probably previous cult leaders were able to be. They like I almost feel like previous cult leaders
That's
were
true.
able to do what they were doing, and majority of people wouldn't even be aware of what was happening. It's not possible in today's day and age, right? if
But
your if
what's
if your
crazy though?
platform is the internet, it's not possible to hide.
No. No, I mean, like, there's that Nexium. There's a couple that were a little bit more intense than this,
Yeah.
but maybe we'll get into those at some point. That'll be fun. Um, but there's that stage. I think I was talking stages. Is I think in a cult, in any cult, and this one not it is included, of course, is the you're in on the inside, and I'm only like speculating. You're on the inside of something like this, and you hit that stage that's like I'm in too deep. I'm like in Heaven's Gate when we talked about the aircraft or the spaceship that Jesus was driving was supposed to come down on this date, and they've been waiting like 18 years or whatever, however long it was for it to happen. On that date when it didn't come, I think a lot of people should have walked, but they were in too deep. It's like I've
Yeah.
devoted my entire life to this. I've put all my resources into this. I've lost a ton of friends, I've lost a ton of family, and here I am. So this better somehow work out in the
Yeah.
end.
There must be a mistake here.
Yeah.
Ship's actually coming in 2 days. Sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
no, I know like Jesus comes when he comes. You know what I mean? Like who are we to say?
So, and that's the thing with this. It's kind of foolproof too, because
Hmm.
if a person rejects that you're their twin flame, if you feel like if I felt someone was my twin flame and they tell me, no, I'm not, I don't have any interest in you, that's exactly what a runner would say.
Yep,
So it's
exactly.
it's foolproof.
It's
Like
built in.
you can't, yeah, there's so many ways to like rephrase it so it seems like it's real, even if it's clearly not meant to be. It's like, oh, that's what a runner would do. You have to continue to chase. You have to show them that they are your twin flame. So they like, how could you ever prove them wrong?
Can't
You can't.
can't.
When someone
So
goes to jail and they say, you got it, you can't give up. This is par for the course. This is your journey. And
yeah,
they continue to do the stalking. It's like, yeah,
like are you going to let the law and society get in the way of this spiritual journey that you're on? It's like
exactly.
for
Yeah.
me, it's like probably, yeah,
So that's the overview of the twin flames cult. But back to
yeah.
the idea of twin flames as a
Okay,
concept, as a premise. I wanted to discuss some thoughts I had. And Greg, if you have any you want to share, if you have some ideas, thoughts about the ones that I highlighted, please feel free. Uh, but potential issues with twin flames, as well as my arguments for twin flames.
okay,
I want to keep this kind of balanced.
fair and balanced.
My first thought when I hear about the twin flames, and you brought it up as, and I do think you'll have some ideas that maybe will counter this. I think of codependency
Mhm.
and this idea that like we're supposed to heal each other, and it makes me think, well, whatever happened to that thought that we want to be with someone not because we need them, but because they add value to our lives, right? And I think at some points, twin flames could be misunderstood to think that you do need people in order to heal, in order to be better, in order to be full, versus like I should work on myself and feel good about myself. And I want to be with someone because I want them in my life because they add joy and happiness to my life, not because I have a void that they need to fill.
No, and I think though it's so complicated because if someone is going through like they have this void or whatever they're dealing with, I think a lot of the times being around other people is exactly the answer, which I don't know what that means. You know, I mean, we tell people to like become social and get back out there, and it'll start to, you know, make you feel better,
Sure.
whether you want to or not, right? And there's something to that about connection with each other. But and like you, I do feel uncomfortable saying you can't heal from your own issues without help. But
It
then I don't
feels
know if
like it
that's
could
true.
lead to like reliance.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like just like you put before you even got into this, there's got to be a balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
People's
All right.
individuality is very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The next thing I was thinking is it really positive to be actively looking for something?
Hmm.
So could it cause someone to create this idea of like an ideal person or ignore the negative or incompatible traits? And I think of this idea of falling in love with the idea of someone versus the actual person themselves. And they're not looking at the person, they're just seeing who they want to see in that person.
I couldn't have said that better. I mean, like it's like what that's exactly it. Like looking for someone, we talked about the blue dot effect with depression or like if you're in a negative state of mind and that's all you're seeing, like you're gonna find the negative. You're gonna
Yeah.
see it. But if
Right.
you're just looking for someone to spend the rest, like you'll find your twin flame and you'll ignore a lot,
Yeah.
right? It's just pretty
Absolutely.
much you become this like anybody that'll take me kind of thing.
And this is something that I don't even think is really just for twin flames. This is also something I think that just the idea of love and
Yeah.
our emphasis on being in a relationship and society can create this in general anyway. But
Yeah, like the society almost says, are you truly successful if you are not in a
exactly,
relationship? It's
100%.
like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, interesting.
The runner chaser dynamic, obviously we know the dangers that can come from that, not giving up when you're being told that that person
Pepe Le
doesn't
Pew.
isn't interested. But also I think about if you're the runner and this idea that you're being told that that someone's your twin flame, right? And you're just not feeling it. Like there's no connection there for you, but everybody around you is telling you that this is your twin flame, the people that are supporting you, trying to help you find a relationship. You may start to uh, have a feeling like, can I even trust myself to know? Should
Yeah.
I just give in to this because I'm being told that this is my twin flame and maybe my thoughts about it aren't trustworthy enough and I don't know enough about for myself.
Hmm. And so not allowing other people to choose for you your path. Like you'll
Yeah,
know.
you're
You'll
right.
know.
Yeah, there has to be some understanding that you need to choose and be the
And that's
one
really
who
like we
determines
were talking about
this.
before, like joking around, gaslighting, but it's like everyone telling you, no, you're crazy. Like this is the person for you. And you're like,
Right.
I feel like I would have felt that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That's wild.
Exactly. The last one I have for arguments about it is the group. It's too much reliance on to allow other people to identify what you should feel or think, kind of what we were just saying there.
Yeah.
And is there potential that we allow this kind of starts to form how we view our life in different ways too, though? Like it doesn't, not just like the group of twin flames, but like is there potential that dating apps kind of create this as well with that finding matches for us based on keywords that we put in and saying like, oh, this person's 100% a match for you or 90%? Like we start to really look for other people to tell us who our matches are versus what we would do historically before all this existed and just get out there and try to get to know people on a personal level and find
Right.
that
And let it
connection
ensue
ourselves.
you. Right.
Right.
And let it like the goal, it's almost like we talk about so many times, like that hedonistic point of view where I'm going to find what makes me feel good. Who cares what is good? And then you're also saying to yourself when you're so desperate for a relationship, you're like, oh, as soon as I find my twin flame, I'll be happy. Then that
Yeah.
means that the entire rest of your life, every moment up until then, you're unhappy because
Right.
you're just seeking happiness. You're not seeking like, oh, it would be nice if I was in a relationship. I'm gonna do the things that are important to me, and along the way that will ensue me. And instead of like that's the pinnacle of my existence is I'm not enough on my own. My identity isn't powerful enough. I need someone else to make me whole. And I don't think that's a
Right.
good
And
approach.
also, I think that people really do need to be able to find that connection on their own and not like it's great if you can use it as a guide to meet people,
Yeah.
but you shouldn't
Yeah.
say like, oh, we're like so compatible because this app is telling me that, or these people are telling me that this is the person that's my match. I
Right.
don't think that's healthy for people. I think it puts well, and I think it puts pressure on the meeting itself, and that could inevitably cause it to fail too.
Hmm.
Just a quick couple of quick arguments for twin flames. I think this is what we all want, right?
Essentially.
We want to have something like this exists. The terms like to find my perfect match, my soulmate, my person, my boo, my baby daddy. Maybe not
I got
that
a lot of people
one.
saying that about me.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, you do.
I've heard of that one.
That's facts. So maybe not that one, but the rest of them, I mean, there it's this concept that we really that romantic side of us really wants to be true. That there's this person out there that just is our other half. That other half, that puzzle piece, right? Finding the perfect fit for us.
And maybe for a lot of this, it did start out in that very, you know, heartfelt, appropriate way where it's like, I felt this. I know what it's like to be with the right person. I know how much better it's made my life. You need this too. And
Yeah.
I think that the going back to Jeff and Shalia, it's like what worked for X doesn't necessarily work for Y.
Right.
That's just not how there's no blueprint for the right thing, the right path of your life.
Yeah.
It's just not.
So I can understand why people gravitate towards a concept like this. And I don't think it's the worst thing to think that there's a person out there and be looking for
Hmm.
your twin flame. Uh, but I do think there has to be some level of like reality to it too, that like they might not completely meet all these criterias or check all these boxes, but hopefully close enough where you feel you can have a future with them. And then the last thing I was going to say is, this might come off as negative, but it's actually just saying like I think that this whole concept could have some validity. Is it's kind of like horoscopes.
Hmm.
I think it's vague enough where it doesn't state specific examples that would make certain situations not true anymore. So, for example, like it never tells you like specifically what traumas or traits the person relates to or balances you out on. It just says traumas or experiences that could balance each other out, or that you might have experienced similar things. You might have more things in common, or vice versa. Like the things you don't have in common kind of work together. So I just it kind of goes into that idea that like either you find the person that's exactly like you, like twinsies, or
Yeah.
you say opposites attract, right? So it's kind of based on things that are sort of vague, but we think they sound specific for some reason. I think when we're hearing it. So I do think it's basically just talking about finding love. And you can read more into it, but I think it's just talking about finding a deep connection based on values, interests, and then working through that in love phase and maintaining a relationship and growing together and doing and trying to heal each other in a positive way.
Yeah, it's like there's nothing wrong with the idea of wanting to find love and people trying to figure out a blueprint to help like what is like a treasure map almost like that. And same thing with like organized religion. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with trying to understand like why we're here, what happens when we
Yeah.
die, like our purpose, our meaning. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that people when this is like these existential questions are so important to us, it's we leave ourselves vulnerable to exploitation, and that's when the cults come in, I think.
Right. I,
And love and spirituality and like it's all sort of this connected thing where it's like this vague idea that we all sort of understand on like a base level, and then we can be exploited because we know we want it and we just
yeah.
don't really know how to get it.
And I think the issue with any of this whole outline for Twin Flames, because honestly, if the whole Jeff and Shalea thing never
Mm.
happened, we might even use the Twin Flames as a way to explain the process of relationships
Yeah,
with patients,
not a
right?
bad blueprint.
It could be an alternative to the love languages if people didn't connect with that. But the thing that could be hindering it is if people take this stuff too literal, it can lead to a misinterpretation or acting on the extreme of anything. And that's with most outlines. But like that runner chaser one definitely scares me. if
That
someone
scares me too.
if
That's the worst
someone's
one.
too literal on it or takes it too far and
Mm.
won't give up. And then the idea of, like we said, worrying about a little bit about codependency. Other than that, it seems like it could be just another helpful framing for how we work through relationships and understand how relationships work.
Or even some new agey,
Yeah.
whatever, take it for what it's worth kind of stuff. But it's interesting. how this Twin Flames has gotten a really bad name now.
It really has. It really
It really
has.
has.
But if it weren't for that, there's so many of us who wouldn't even be familiar with the term
The
Twin
concept at all.
Flames.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's true.
So
Good point.
interesting idea how that all comes to light.
Well, Dave, I think we wrapped up the love session.
I'm really glad we did this. As you mentioned, I wanted to do this back in, was it 2022 you said?
2022. Yes, I have
All
I
right.
have the in my phone from
I
that. Yeah.
think we put it off because for multiple reasons the last few years. We finally got to it. I'm glad. I think we did it. I personally think this was a nice way to approach it because obviously the story itself about the cult is out there for people to already
Mhm.
understand, but I wanted to do a deeper dive on why
What it
this,
is, yeah.
what this term even means and all that stuff.
They
So
hijacked it too.
they totally did. They
Yeah.
totally did.
So
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate everybody who's been reaching out with suggestions, comments, lots of comments on Spotify, which has been great to respond to. We appreciate even constructive criticism that we've been getting, even though it's all in my head right now as we're going, even through our episode.
I know.
There, but no, it's a growing thing. But in general, there's just been an outpouring of people commenting and offering us positive reviews or just neutral reviews, which is also appreciated. So as always, I'll make that plea. If you haven't done so, please leave a rating, a review, or subscribe anywhere that you listen or watch. It's always greatly appreciated. And then also look into the Apple subscribe or Patreon. We'll put links up in our social media. I haven't done it yet. I will do that. And we'll be posting about it so that people can check it out and hopefully subscribe and take advantage of all the new offerings.
Works for me.
All right. We are currently recording on Sunday, February 9th. Tonight is the Super Bowl. Greg, who you rooting for?
Okay. Wow. I was not expecting this. So here's the thing. I have an ex who loves the Eagles. This is interesting, like that we're talking about this on Valentine's Twin Flames thing. And I love Tom Brady. So I'm kind of torn, and I know this doesn't make sense, but let me make it make sense. I'm torn right now between rooting for my ex's team, don't really want to do that, or rooting for the team that could damage Tom Brady's legacy.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm really torn. Like I really
Gotcha.
just want, I think I'm just gonna say it right now in front of all our lovely listeners. I think I'm rooting for the Eagles.
Yeah, same. I'm rooting for the Eagles. Nothing against the Chiefs. I just, yeah, it's weird rooting
Is
for
it
the
a Tom
Eagles.
Brady thing? Is it a Tom Brady thing for you?
Not really. It's more just I think the Eagles have a good team, and if it's not my team, I don't like seeing the same team win over and over and over. I like mixing it up. I think the Eagles deserve it, but we'll see what happens. It's hard to root for the Eagles because we're historically have never rooted for the Eagles when we were good. The Patriots, obviously, so it's weird doing so. We'll see what happens.
And here's one more question, sports related, and Dave, because I know you're a sports nut. Even if Mahomes adds up enough Super Bowls to kind of compete with Brady, right? He's still got a way to go. The fact that he's never beaten Brady in the playoffs, does that mean he can never take his legacy?
I mean, I think that Brady's legacy will be hard to touch, regardless of Mahomes winning.
Probably have to say
Brady's done this with so many different teams. Within the Patriots, but like how many different
I know
receivers and dynamics on the team. I mean, Mahomes has had a core group almost like feels like his whole career so far.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah.
We'll see. All right. Well, we don't want to bore. Yeah, I mean, this is a sports podcast. That's for sure.
All right, everybody. We'll be back next week. Have a great night and have a great day, whatever you're listening. And we'll see you later.
See you later.